At one point in my career, I worked with someone who was very dynamic, very intelligent. And I was on an interview panel, and he was the one being interviewed. I was surprised that during the interview, he was very silly. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this guy's not going to get this position. Someone would ask him a question. It was three of us on the panel. Someone would ask him a question, and he would just burst out in laughter. Thought, oh no, this is not good. So, he didn't get the position. However, several months later, I had a position in my organization and he applied for it. And he did a fantastic job. He actually listened to someone who said, you know what, you need to cut out the goofiness. You need to be able to answer the question because they're looking for an employee who can really just handle their business with not just in front of their leadership, but then other organizations as well. So again, he did a fabulous job. This gentleman was in his early 60s. And I say that because a lot of times people think that, oh, you're in the early 60s, you should be in a retirement mode. But no, he did a fabulous job. What he did was he brought his prior experience into a position that he knew little about. He learned it. He was able to grow his community. He received awards. And again, he did a fantastic job. And I often bring him up because, again, I believe he may have been 63. I know he was in his early 60s, but life is not over. And that crazy thing of, oh, well, you can't teach your old dog new tricks. Well, I'm sorry, 63 is not old, but he learned a new skill. He learned how to, I'm not going to get into it because people will know, but he learned how to communicate with people. He learned how to develop a new skill level in his early 60s. And I encourage anyone that feels that, oh, life is over. Heck no, it's never over. Again, I'm going to say it for the third time. He did a fabulous job and received awards. Life continues to go on as long as you apply yourself. So welcome to Lead Like You Mean It, people. Got to hit the table. Today we have our first time. We have Gary Hibbs. He was with us, I believe, back in August, so we've got him back again. Gary Hibbs is a transformative leader, executive coach, and founder of Unleashed to Lead. With 30 years of experience in senior living and leadership development, a former regional executive director for Erickson Senior Living and certified Maxwell Leadership Coach, Gary has led multiple state operations and developed emerging leaders across the industry. He brings wisdom, vulnerability, and practical tools to leaders seeking to serve with excellence and heart. Gary, welcome back to Lead Like You Mean It,
Hey,
people.
Carla. Hey, whoever is here. I'm glad that you're here. Yeah, good to be back.
It's good to have you, Gary.
I love this. And, when you're talking about, you're not too old to do something. You can teach an old dog new tricks and all those, those things we know. It's so true. It's so true. Yeah.
Tell me about your experience with that, just working with senior leaders.
Oh,
Senior
yeah.
leaders meaning the person, not the position.
Yeah, the person working with older adults, whether you call seniors or the word elder, I like the word, elder, because elder means that you have life experience. By the way, wisdom does not always come with age. Sometimes age just comes alone. I've seen that in my work. So just because someone's older doesn't, mean they're wise necessarily. You may have seen the movie The Intern with Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway. If you haven't seen it, it is a great movie. And De Niro, he starts with this voiceover. It says, they say that life is about love and work. Well, my wife just died and I just retired. So, as if life, when that happens, as if it's over. But as you said in the lead in, it couldn't be further from the truth. I've had the privilege of working and seeing older adults have what are called either not necessarily careers, but encore interests particularly when they're living in and with community, which I think we were created to live in and with community and be connected and not in isolation. I have seen people flourish in ways that they were just shocked themselves by once they had the time and the focus and the realization that they could do some things that they never did before.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I have seen The Intern. As a matter of fact, it is saved on my DVR.
We need to go back to it time and again.
Yeah, because I tell you what I appreciate. The wisdom of Robert De Niro's character. And then also to show, and I don't know what age, I guess Anne Hathaway, I guess she was supposed to be maybe in her 30s, but to the fact that she didn't want him there.
That's right.
But then when he started to share his wisdom and he was able to do things, well, I think he also cleaned the table that she hated, but he was able to share his wisdom with her. And she just learned, oh, okay. She opened up to understanding that I could learn more. And this man is really helping me.
That's right.
So
that's right. I mean, what he knew about was relationships and the meaning of relationships. You know, he did come in with, I think, his slide rule and some antiquated things that weren't going to be useful in that hip marketing sales environment. And she was creating this company and feeling all of this pressure. And she lost sight of who she was.
Yeah.
And, you know, older adults and the wisdom of the elders, again, like I said, just because you're older doesn't mean you're wise. But generally speaking, when you have life experience and you have practice and you make a lot of mistakes, and failure, by the way, is our friend because it teaches us something if we do something with it, then there is wisdom there that we can help other people avoid certain mistakes and counsel them. So that movie brings that out in wonderful force. And when I was working as an executive director, 4 different communities with Erickson Senior Living, which I loved. It's a great company and they're growing and doing some great things. I mean, I was able to tap into that wisdom working with older adults because all of us want to have a sense of significance. And sometimes in communities like that, we don't tap into that. We think we're just supposed to, you know, have a nice living environment and that's enough for the older adult, meaning it's 72 degrees, you know, that you're doing all these things for them. But actually that's not necessarily true. You need to set an environment where they're able to exercise these gifts and live on and with purpose. Not, you know, who wants to live in a hotel forever and be catered to forever? No, I got that for you. I'll do that for you. That's not real life. And quite frankly, it can do harm.
Yeah. So I learned that with my mom because as she started to deteriorate, I wanted to do everything for her. And I realized, no, she's still a human being. She is still alive and she still has her mind. So I had to learn to back off and just let her do what she was able to do. And she would say, no, Carla, I have it. And I said, no, Ma, I want to take care of you. I've got it. No. So we would go through this. I mean, tell you, to be honest, Gary, like every day. And so I had to learn to say, you know what? All right, go for it, Ma. I'll be back. Let me know when you need some help.
That's right. I mean, it's almost as if we become the parent, you know. None of us are truly independent, by the way. That's a myth. No one is truly independent. You know, everything that we do, everything that we engage in. Somebody said, oh, well, Charles Lindbergh, he flew over the Atlantic Ocean by himself. He was independent. Well, no. Somebody built the airplane. Somebody financed the trip, you know, on and on. None of us are independent. We're interdependent, and that is real life. That being said, we do fear being too dependent on others. You know, I had a moment, my father, he's gone now. I had a great dad, but he's been going on 13 years. In fact, this year he would be 100. But he at one point, very mild-mannered introvert, but I tried to help him with something and he didn't explode, but he became very expressive. No, I've got it.
Yeah.
I was helping him physically to get through something. And I got it. And basically what he was saying, let me maintain as much independence as I can, So, and in working with older adults, we have to realize and appreciate this whole idea of the impact of loss or the fear of loss and that kind of thing when we do create aging communities.
Talk to me about your Sunday night event, because I attended one maybe about 2-3 weeks ago, and there was a gentleman on there. I can't remember. I know he was involved.
The Reverend Dr. Paul Smith, you may have been talking about. Yeah. And he wrote a book called Building Beloved Communities. You look that up. And Paul, I met him at one of the communities where I was the director. And, he was right in the middle of the civil rights movement. 90 years old, turned 90, and Paul doesn't mind. Hey, Paul, if you're watching. And Paul is just an amazing, amazing man. His best friend is Andrew Young. He used to refer to this guy, Andy. I said, who's Andy? He said, Andrew Young. What? And he introduced Andrew Young to Martin Luther King at Talladega back in 1957. But I had Paul come on, and every Sunday night I meet, I bring together the unleashed community, just 7:30, just for 30 minutes, unless I have a sage like Paul on, then it lasts 90 minutes because he does his thing and people are asking all kinds of questions. But, Carla, the human condition does not like isolation. And the reason I bring the community together, it's not necessarily that people need more information or knowledge. You can press a button in this day of AI and get that.
Yeah.
But what we long for, especially with, social media and technology and all of that, is connection and community. That's what you and I are doing right here, and everybody else that's on, and hopefully we'll get some interaction. AI can't touch that because AI doesn't have a soul, doesn't have a heart. And, you and I are friends already, and we have a relationship, and we're building that relationship. So I do that every Sunday night. And Paul was a phenomenal sage. I call it Sage Sunday, the first Sunday of every month we do that. Yep.
Wow. Okay. So tell me what you've learned from the community as they interact with your guests.
Yeah, the community can ask any question they want, and it's not a one and done. When Paul came, he met somebody there, and they're engaging in dialogue. Paul is helping my friend who was on that call do some things, Dr. LaTanya Mann, and she does some work that Paul's experience helped and is continuing to help. Paul's an author, wrote a book that was germane to what she does. And, that's what community does. You connect, make connections, and build off of that. And I think, that's what we're longing for. And older adults, it doesn't change just because you get a certain age. The word retirement, to many people means to go away. Well, who in the world wants to go away?
Right.
There used to be a theory in aging called the disengagement theory, where it was thought that older adults just naturally disengage. It couldn't be further from the truth. Not at all. I tell my class, I'm an adjunct at the Erickson School of Aging at UMBC, and in the course we were just talking the other day is when you've seen one older adult, guess how many you've seen? One. We tend to stereotype and categorize and all of that. But no, when we're younger, if we're, mild-mannered, we'll tend to be a really nice older person. We tend to magnify, not always, but we tend to magnify who we were. If we were kind of grumpy when we were younger, a lot of times, watch out.
Yeah.
Because that'll magnify. That's called the personality theory, But I think the important thing, and what you touched on earlier, is that aging is an opportunity. It's a huge opportunity, especially when you're living in community, and you're connecting with others in ways that you wouldn't before, because you did have I'll call it a bit of a straitjacket of the 9 to 5, and you had all those obligations. But when you have the wisdom and hopefully the health, because we do lose the health, but when you have the wisdom, the health, and the time, to do things that you've never done before.
Yeah.
And working in the communities, I saw that again and again and again. I brought my class to the Charlestown retirement community, and we had a panel of residents that just talked about what life was like living at Charlestown.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was real. Yeah, it really was cool. And, you know, they got to ask questions. What would you tell your 20-year-old self and that kind of thing? Fascinating. But one of the residents there, Peg, she was talking about, you know, I had no idea that I could paint. And now her painting is hanging up in the Charlestown Gallery. She never painted. She thought stick figures was the extent of it for her.
Yeah.
And she saw that. So these gifts come out later in life, and it's gratifying.
Yeah. I wanna flip it to the other side that you mentioned, I think about twice earlier. Just because you're at a certain age does not mean that you're wise. And I learned that, I would say maybe mid-career. I was working with someone in their 60s, and I was so disappointed because I looked up to them and I just thought, oh, this person just, you know, I know that I think she had just recently turned 60. And I looked up to her and I thought, oh, this person has so much wisdom, because that's what I grew up with. I grew up with a lot of older adults. My grandmother, both of my grandmothers and their friends, you know, relatives, so forth. So I just thought, oh, I'm going to learn a lot from her. Gary, it was so disappointing because just her value system was like it's someone who was 16 years old, like she was still developing. And I can't express how disappointed I was. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, is she for real? This can't be true. Because again, I was surrounded around older adults who had just a huge amount of wisdom, and I expected the same thing from her.
Yeah,
and it wasn't true.
Yeah, and it doesn't just automatically come. I mean, experience by itself, if it's not reflected upon and chewed on and prayed over, and you know, if you're not open to learning from that, what can I learn from this? You know, experience by itself doesn't do it. We have to think about, what did I go through? You know, what is God trying to teach me through this? And my learning lessons. That's why I said earlier, failure really is our friend. And when we fall, then we say, what can I learn from this? That's the right question. Not, oh, woe is me. Why is this happening to me? I'm in pain. Yeah. But what can you learn from it? That reflected upon experience over time is really what makes a difference.
Okay, Gary, it's 18 minutes and I've got to ask one of my questions.
Fire away.
Okay, you've spent decades in senior living leadership. What does strong leadership look like when you are responsible, not just for operations, but for the dignity, safety, and well-being of aging residents?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's realizing what they are going through. We've already talked about some of that, you know. One of the sessions I have with my class is the top 10 leadership mistakes, of which I've made every one, some of them multiple times. You know, but you don't want top down leadership. You know, I'm the boss. Leadership is not a title. Leadership is influence. It's connection, and that, you know, you influence. And how do you influence? Well, you meet people where they are. You know, there's a great motivational speaker who's going now, Zig Ziglar. Zig Ziglar would say, you know, if you give people what they want, they're going to then give you what you want. Now, it can sound kind of manipulative, but no, that's just human nature. If you meet people first where they are, then things are going to work. Things are going to work. But we have to have other people in mind first. And I think to the extent that is practicable and possible in a senior living community, because, I mean, you involve them. I never gave them a vote in terms of, and I have to be careful how I say that, they had a influence. But I couldn't say, you know what, we're going to get new carpet in this room. Let's put it up to a vote. Do we want the green or the red? No, you can't do it. It'd be a mess. So what you do is you're clear with people in terms of what their role is. And I'll tell you, I mean, I had residents that can run circles around me in certain areas. And quite frankly, all of our staff, but, one was the treasurer for a huge company in the Northeast. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But, a resident who hasn't aged well and is still trying to prove themselves will try to push their agenda. But if they've, as Maslow would say, self-actualized and they're at peace with themselves, I could draw on them, whether the background was finance, or even I had somebody whose background was dining, and I brought them through the kitchen. And I said, "Hey, Bob, do you have any ideas?" And I knew Bob wouldn't come in there and start telling me how stupid we were and why in the world are you doing this? Yeah, Bob gave some great suggestions. Here's my point. We all want to live in and with purpose and matter and be significant. And to the extent we're able to do that with residents, and I will also say staff, how do you lead your staff? How do you lead any human being, no matter what their role is? You meet them where they are, you get them participating in a way that makes sense, given their role, and they're able to help create the community. In fact, the mission statement for years and years that we had is we create communities where we share our gifts and celebrate life.
Oh, that's beautiful.
We create communities where we share our gifts and celebrate life. And that's what we as human beings want to do. We want to be able to express who we are. There used to be a day and age in aging communities when you came into a community, particularly the healthcare areas, you would say what your favorite drink was. Well, guess what? You wrote it down. You had that same drink every meal. No choice, no variation. I can tell you horror stories from the past where, we did things, and I say we. I'm talking about I hate this term, but the aging industry.
Yeah.
But services to older adults were done primarily for efficiency and administrative ease. Nursing homes used to line up residents and just, I saw this years ago, but line them up in a row of 10 and just do their medications. Line them up.
Yeah. Wow.
Bing, 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 bing. Give them their medications. Why? Because it was easier.
Wow.
Crazy. So I can go on and on about that, but here's the deal. We want to be engaged in purposeful, meaningful, express ourselves, have as much choice as possible. When you're in a congregate setting, it's easy to limit choice because of this administrative ease. But the essence of who we are as human beings and expressing ourselves is to be able to make choices. I tell my class, how many of you want me to tell you what you're going to have for dinner tonight?
Yeah.
No. I said, how many of you even know what you're going to have for dinner tonight? I haven't even thought about it.
Yeah.
So here's my point. You're able to express. And as human beings, we should be able to choose. We have the right even to make stupid mistakes, with the freedom of choice.
And years ago, our church used to spend time at a senior living facility in Washington, D.C. We would go there, I think it was once a month. And what I noticed by going there is that the residents, even though a lot of them were, I would say in their 90s, a lot of them were in their 90s, they were still human beings. So what I decided to do, some of them couldn't speak. You know how they would wheel them out into the hallway and just leave them. And they would see people go back and forth. So sometimes I would walk over to them and I would just touch their hand. Do you know that meant so much to them? They were human beings. They simply wanted a nice, kind touch on the hand. And I'm a silly person. And I would say something, how you doing? What you doing right now? And they would try their best to say, you know what I'm doing? I'm sitting here, But it was just a silly way. And then they would take their hand and tap me, and they just appreciated the human touch. I mean, the conversation must have lasted 10 seconds. Yeah. But they're still human beings. They still.
And you know what you did, Carla, as you're describing that, you saw the person. We want to be seen.
Yeah.
We want to be seen as human beings. And, you know, it's not easy. The work, particularly in nursing homes where there's so much overwhelming need.
Yeah.
But if anybody listening to this is looking for something to do that's meaningful and to spend their time, you know, volunteer at a nursing home. And to your point, Carla, it doesn't take much. How many people can serve somebody by touching their hand?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's not about rocket science. It's about realizing that we human beings want to live in community and have purpose and be touched, as you say, both metaphorically and literally. The human touch, what that does for our health is huge. And you see a lot of residents who, you know, particularly if they've lost a spouse of 65 years, they're no longer touched.
Yeah.
You know, it's just extremely difficult. So, you know, when you asked a little while ago in terms of leadership, I think the biggest thing is, you know, people would say as an executive director, hey, Hibbs, what did you do? Well, you know, I said, I do a lot of diverse things, but if I had to, you know, pull it in, I'd say it's people, process, purpose, and purpose is part of the people, but really people and process, to make sure we're on the same sheet of music and that we realize these issues with human beings and what matters to human beings. And I think a good leader in a community like that works at being in tune with that.
So did you see, and this was part of from a residential point of view, did you see certain people in a leadership role? And I'm not talking about, for instance, your position. I'm talking about the residents. Like someone will stand up and they will lead a group of their friends.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's why I say have the residents have opportunities to do that, to lead. You know, residents would come to me and say, hey, you know, we ought to have a genealogy club. And I thought, awesome. What room do you want to lead that in? Start it, you know? Yeah. So apparently, you know, there's a passion, and I go on and on about different examples, but the residents as leaders, you know, at the communities. Now, you mentioned Erickson Senior Living, and those are big communities. And the great thing about those big communities is that there's so much opportunity. You know, most of the big Erickson communities where there's, you know, 2,000 plus people living there, you know, they have close to 300, if not 300, resident driven activities and groups. You have to work really hard to be bored and isolated when you're living in community like that. And I think the human condition, you know, we were meant, I can't say it enough, but to live in community and to connect and to do meaningful, purposeful things, not necessarily for money, but, you know, there's something about the human condition that wants to create. Yeah. And I believe to be co-creators with God in our environment. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're into like about 12:29, Gary. I've got another question.
Fire away.
All right.
I love this topic.
It's a follow-up. What do leaders outside this industry often misunderstand about the complexity and responsibility of senior living?
Yeah, well, I think it's that you need to know your customer, like in any business. You need to know the customer, and the stereotypes that we have in terms of aging and ageism, you know, and there's another term called ableism. You know, I mean, in communities with older adults, cliques are there. You know, you can have somebody who's 95 and able-bodied and is discriminating against a 75-year-old who is in a wheelchair because I don't want to see that wheelchair. You know, this is part of the human condition. I mean, I'm not
Right.
going to romanticize that, older adults are, all in the right. We talked about that before. Now, wherever you see one older adult, you see one older adult. There is such a huge diversity in terms of personality and all of that. And, that complexity where you have, most continuing care retirement communities are 200 or 300, maybe 400 people. You get to 400, and that's a big continuing care retirement community. But the ones that I've had experience in where there's over 2,000, you're talking about a lot of people and a lot of personalities. And then you're also talking about family members who see mom as who she was when she was 45 or 50.
Yes.
And don't realize that mom is now, 85 and maybe is having some mentation problems. And how do you deal with that? How do you handle that? Not only is the older adult going through themes of loss, but so is the family. I'd have family members come in and, they'd flick their card and it said attorney on it and said, you better fix this up, on my desk because they were angry. But you know what? It wasn't so much that they were angry. You need to know that there's something else going on. I'm losing my mother.
Yeah.
Here's the reality. Now, you can't, there were cases where, and sometimes in my worst leadership moments, if I lost my cool, I might be a little difficult, but the leader needs to get that, absorb that, and not let their emotions, like any good leader, you don't let your emotions rule the day. But I will tell you, in a retirement community, and I'm just touching the surface of issues, I think a leader in that setting, I think this is maybe the question that you're going to need to understand those complexities. What's really going on here? What's really going on, no matter who the constituent is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Gary, we're at the end of our time together. It's been fantastic. I appreciate you coming on and talking about our elders that we can learn so much from, and then also from the business part of it, just opportunity to support them. So in a leadership role, I always see it as a supportive role, and the leader is a part of the team.
Huge. That's a great way of putting it. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And just being able to enjoy them. I can see that while you were there, you enjoyed working with them.
I loved it. Matter of fact, I would say it's a great area. People used to, early in my career, what do you do? I work with older adults. Oh, well, that's nice. In other words, like, why in the world would you want to do that? Anybody can get in touch with me if you want to learn about that. But, working with older adults is a rich environment. So, yeah, I've loved it and still love it. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And for the viewers, I have in the comments, we'll make it available for you all. We'll have the comments from Gary. We'll have your website, Gary. And then we'll also have some information on how they can reach you.
That'll be great.
And then also we have a gift that if you're still waiting for that promotion, find out what's really holding you back. Get your free assessment. The link will be in the comments. Thank you, Gary. Thanks, you, our
Carla.
producer.
Appreciate your work. Love your work.
Thank you. Thank you. And also, we'll have in the comments about your Sunday night meeting. Yes. I believe it's at 7 or is it 7:30?
7:30 every Sunday night. I even did it during the Super Bowl and had 12 people who didn't
like
football.
Oh my gosh, Gary. Boy, you're a Superman. All right. Click in the link for the hidden promotion killers. And thank you, Gary. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Everyone, we're out here. Thank you for attending.